Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry it took so long for a new video, but you gotta spend time with your family on the holidays, so. Anyway, looking at last episode's comments, it seems like you guys want me to talk about staples, or techs, or hand traps and board breakers, and you know what? Let's do these one at a time, starting with hand traps, since that seems to be a highly requested one. Obviously, this is going to be just a short general overview, and if you want to go into anything in more depth, you're going to find a whole world of videos explaining this in better detail, because this is a very deep science, or math, or art. It's one of them. It's also very dependent on the current metagame. Let's start with the most meta-defining question of all, which is... I'm just kidding, that's not the question. It's actually, what even is a hand trap? Most of you are hand trap experts at this point, so I'm not gonna beat the living Jesus out of this horse after it's dead. But because we get new players all the time, at least I hope we do, hand traps are cards that can be activated, usually during your opponent's turn but not always exclusively, by discarding them from your hand, giving you a pseudo quickfire trap interruption. The benefit being that they don't have to be set first, and the downside being, well, nothing. Usually. Their effects can range from the little fuzzball that everyone loves that can stop attacks, to the planet-sized meteor that leaves your opponent's field as a molten hole. A molten hole with a lot of attack and no protection. Now, we've got all these fun effects, but what even is the point? The real question, why hand traps? At some point during Yu-Gi-Oh's history, decks were getting too fast and turn 1s were getting a little too powerful. So to remedy the power creep, instead of doing something silly like lowering the number of Omni-Negates or limiting unbreakable boards, Konami decided to simply shovel more fuel into the fire and let nature take its course, now giving players a way to interact with each other even on turn 1. And now that we have a plethora of different ways to interact with your best friend or worst enemy during their most vulnerable time, it leaves us with the important question, which ones? For starters, it depends on your format. If you're playing Master Duel, for example, there's basically 2 hand traps that will be relevant in 99.9% of situations, those being Ash Blossom and Max C. And they're so incredibly important to almost every single deck that we're straight up not even going to talk about them. That's right, they've gone so far up the importance scale that they've looped back around and become not important. Now, outside of the easy ones, the other hand traps you put depend on the meta and your deck. Are there grave effects going off? Then you might need a crow. A DD crow. Is that not enough? Then you might need a lance. Sia. Wait, these don't banish for cost? You know what? Fuck it. No more graveyard. Dimension Shifter. Are there decks with a lot of easy choke points? Let me introduce Effect Veiler, the only hand trap that can negate a monster's effect on the field. That's over the age of 5. And under the age of, I don't know, how old is Cyber Dragon Infinity? Infinity? Probably not Infinity, that's too old. Are there just so many monsters and searches that all the other hand traps look hopeless? Then it's time for Drollbird and Big Rock. Oops, fuck, hang on, this guy needs a lock on him. There we go. And now we have a ton of different options. But it leaves us with a new problem. How many do we put in? One of the most important things to remember about hand traps is that they don't help you win, they just help you not lose. While it's totally possible to make a deck with only hand traps, it's also totally possible to run headfirst into oncoming traffic. But that doesn't make it a good idea either. Though this Tenpai deck is pretty damn close.
What the hell is even that?
Somewhere between an unplayable deck of only hand traps and a deck with no hand traps that auto loses when it goes second, is a deck with the magical number of hand traps that lets you stop your opponent's plays but still leaves you with enough combo pieces to do your own fun little game of Yu-Gi-Oh! How many is that? 7. No, I'm just kidding, I made that up. It depends on how consistent your deck is. If your deck is known for multiple 1-card starters, or a yellow button consistency skill, you can usually throw in as many as you'd like, but that's not true for most decks. So let's look at some common gotchas for hand traps. Number 1. Your deck doesn't like monsters in the grave. If you play something like Madolches and Duel Links with no Angeli and no Vernisylphs, having monsters in the grave is a really bad time.
What am I supposed to do?
In other formats, we have Imperm, which isn't a monster. But in Duel Links, you really need to think about whether it's worth risking not being able to combo just to stop your opponent on turn 1. Number 2. Some decks just don't like some hand traps. For example, if your strategy involves trying to banish cards on their turn, then maybe, just maybe, Lancia isn't the best option for you. Though sometimes things are bad enough that you have to run it anyway. Likewise, if you're playing Duel Links and you're using a skill, make sure the hand traps don't conflict with the skill requirements. As funny as it would be to run a giant rock in your bird deck, just so you can name it 2 birds with 1 stone, the skill says no. Finally, you want to ask yourself if your deck even needs to run hand traps. Some metas don't always need a ton of hand traps. Some formats don't have Ash. Some decks are just good at playing through boards, and sometimes you would rather just run some non-hand trap techs instead. A topic for a future video. Anyway, I hope this was a quick fun overview for anyone that wanted an unga bunga lesson on hand traps. And remember, if you do it wrong, the only thing that will feel trapped is your hand. Haha. Thank you guys for watching. I'm glad to be back, and I'm just gonna be making random videos. Maybe it'll be more of these little lessons. Maybe it'll be exciting new stuff now that we've got fun stuff in the game, like Dragon Maid, and I've been playing Invoked Shaddolls lately because I don't have a brain. Like the video if you like it, subscribe it if you subscribe it. You know how it goes. See ya.